Thank God it's Friday, and you know what that means. Friday's main event, the show of shows, it's Petree's Pit. And today I'm joined once again by my tag team partner in business, the Arn Anderson to my Tully Blanchard, JDO double G, Jordan. How's it going, brother?
Going on, everybody?
Sorry for last week's absence. We had a Halloween party, and I had a little bit too much fun. So we spent the week repackaging the podcast. It's going to look a little different, a little cleaner. My editor and I, my tag team partner in life, my partner Summer and I have been working on this, trying to make it a little prettier. So we hope you guys like the way it looks. Um, have new thumbnails. If you haven't already, please go check out some of our other videos, get an idea of who we are, our affinity for wrestling, the kind of things we like. But we're back. And we have a fun episode for you. Not every week of this show is going to be contemporary things. We're not always going to talk about what's going on in wrestling news or what's going on the episodes, because this is just a conversation, and we love wrestling. And we found something this week that really interested us. Sports Illustrated did a top 20 wrestlers in WWE history list. Now, we want to preface that WWE history is not wrestling history. It's that company's history. And wrestling is more than the WWE, but it's really been the biggest show in town for a long time, and they've had all the best wrestlers of the last 40 years. So we want to talk about this list, and something that interested us particularly. But Jordan, I'll let you go with the list first.
All right. So top 20 WWE wrestlers of all time, according to Sports Illustrated. So number 20 is Becky Lynch. Number 19 was Mick Foley. Number 18 was Y2J Chris Jericho. Number 17 was CM Punk. 16 was Andre the Giant. 15 was the Viper Randy Orton. 14 was the rated R superstar Edge. 13 is Rowdy Roddy Piper. 12 is Kurt Angle. 11 is the Macho Man Randy Savage. 10 was Bruno Sammartino. 9 is Bret Hart. 8 is the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels. 7 is the Game Triple H. 6 is the Undertaker. 5 is the Tribal Chief Roman Reigns. 4, John Cena. 3, the Great One, The Rock. Number 2, Hulk Hogan. And number 1, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Wow. Um,
Pretty wild list.
a pretty crazy list. There aren't any names that shock me other than maybe Becky. Becky Lynch being at number 20 is pretty shocking.
Yeah.
Um, often I find when you do lists like this, when you start comparing the men and women, it gets really dicey because women's wrestling, it's just not quite as evolved yet as men's wrestling, right? I mean, it's in terms of the
It doesn't have the history.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it has history, but the competition level was not that high in the past, at least in the
Mm-hmm.
WWE. So it's odd, but
Yeah.
what when you look at this list, maybe barring Becky Lynch, what because I think that shocked us both a lot.
Yeah.
What are some things that stick out to you? Give me three things that stick out to you.
Um. Okay. So first of all, the fact that Edge is over Randy is pretty crazy.
Mhm.
Um, Considering, not to say that Edge, isn't great, isn't deserving of consideration for a list like this, but I think the fact that Randy's been going for so long, and he has all the accolades, and the fact that Edge was gone for it was almost 10 years, and
Yeah,
you
about
know,
9 years. Yeah.
I mean, Randy hasn't had a gap like that as far as missing time,
Mhm.
um, and still now is going, still wrestling, and Edge is too, but obviously he just got hurt again.
Yeah.
Um, So I think that one was pretty shocking to me that he was above him. I think the fact that Andre the Giant was so low, a little surprising to me. Thought he would have been higher considering just how how great he was, how literally larger than life he was in the WWE
Mhm.
and wrestling in general. And then I think for me too, something surprised me was the fact that Roman Reigns was so high, like especially over someone like the Undertaker.
Mhm.
Because not to say that Roman isn't deserving of to be on this list, especially since the title reign he just had, which was one of the greatest in my lifetime. But the fact that the Undertaker was so dominant for as long as he was, um, and it was so synonymous with WWE wrestling. Um, the fact that he was six and Roman was five, I think was pretty crazy to me. So those are the things that really I think surprised me the most about the list.
Um, I love all three of those things. Um, I don't know how much they factored Edge's success as a tag team wrestler in this list because he has a lot of tag team championships with different partners. But Orton is, I wouldn't say the barometer for world champion, but he's got to be close to it. I mean, what is he? 15 titles? So 14.
I think he's yeah, it's 14 or 15. I can't remember, but
15.
it's somewhere in that range.
Yeah. I'm one to say 15, but
14. He's
it's a lot.
14-time world champion.
14-time world champion. I mean,
Yeah,
that's insane. And I mean, you look at the success and evolution, how long he's been doing it, and he's still doing it at a high level. I mean, he looks great. He wrestles well. It's very possible that he's going to have a huge feud with Cody Rhodes down the road. Um, it's interesting. Uh, your point on Roman. Uh, Listen, I'll be the first to defend Roman Reigns in terms of I think he gets a lot of criticism from older fans because of the things he did maybe 7 years ago, as opposed to the things he's been doing for the last four, which is have you said one of I'll go as far as say it's the greatest title reign of our lifetime in
yeah,
terms of the length, the number of great matches, the number of great feuds, the amount of people he's put over.
yeah,
His title reign has been the platform for this new era of WWE. You look at all the guys that are over right now: Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Jey Uso, Cody Rhodes. On the men's side, those are the biggest names. LA Knight, one of the hugest names, and he was big before he faced Roman, but exiting that feud, he was huge, right? So you just look at the top guys; they all worked with Roman and got over more than they already were because of Roman.
hmm
But having him over the Undertaker is that's I would consider that a hot take, right? And that's pretty
yeah,
insane.
yeah,
Um,
slightly.
for me, the I'll go with a few other things. Angle at number 12
hmm
is crazy. He was there for 5 years, right? 6 years, I guess.
Um,
2005, 2006.
yeah, yeah. I don't remember when trying to remember when he debuted. Um,
Late debuted right at the beginning of 2000, right? Or at the end of
I
99.
think I thought it wasn't it like 98? Maybe it wasn't that early. Let me see if I can find that real quick.
Anyways, while you do that, so even if I mean, say he's there 7 years, 7 years. I mean, to be number 12 on this list is wild. Um, because you're not counting
Mar-
the TNA stuff.
yeah, March of 1999.
March of 1999. Okay, so
Yeah,
you're not counting any of the TNA stuff. You got 99 to 2006.
yeah, he left in '06.
So that's 7 years. I mean, it's
Hmm
not a lot. It's to be over some
No,
guys that were there for pushing 20 years or in some cases even longer. So that's interesting. The miss the the underrepresentation of older guys or the misrepresentation of them. Bruno number 10 is insane. It's insane. He was
Yeah.
the champion that helped this company separate itself from the NWA. He was
Hmm.
champion for combined over 2,000 days. Um, it, yeah, that's hard to believe. Andre at 16, ridiculous. He was. You look at some of the old magazines in the early 80s and late 70s. He's number one or number two on most lists every month for the most popular wrestler. They couldn't put the
Yeah.
title on him because he never lost, and he would never lose the title. So
Mhm.
that's odd. And then you're missing guys like Bob Backlund and Pedro Morales, who both were champions for over 1,000 days.
Mhm.
So I find that odd. The thing that really sticks out to me the most, okay, is and it's not shocking because I don't know how much involvement the WWE had with this list. Most of the time they put the feelers out of who they want where on these lists. I feel like they're very
Yeah.
very in control of their narrative, but Triple H at number 7. Now, a few months ago, What Culture Pro Wrestling did a list, or they did a video where they named 100 wrestlers better than Triple H. And Jordan and I talked about it, obviously in private because the podcast wasn't around then. But and I just thought, well, that's crazy. 100 wrestlers over Triple H is crazy. But there are a lot of wrestlers better than Triple H, and I feel like Triple H is really overrated. And I'm just gonna go out and say, this show's not for kids. Fuck Triple H. I've never tuned into a wrestling show more often and seen a more boring champion than Triple H. I've
Oh
never
no.
liked him. He does not inspire me. I want him to lose because I don't like him, not because he's a good heel. And and maybe as this video goes on, we'll talk about people who are good heels. But Triple H, number 7 on a WWE list, insane. Because I could probably name about 11 guys on this list alone better than him. And you know what? What's more is I don't think this guy's a top 50 wrestler ever. And you've read the thumbnail of this video already. You're wondering why haven't we talked about it yet? Is Triple H one of the 50 best wrestlers ever? No, no, he's not. He damn sure shouldn't be 7 on this list. And if we're talking about general wrestling, he's not top 50. It might seem like a hot take, but I don't think it is. Now, listen, Jordan's a bigger WWE fan than I am. He's also been watching more intently than I have over the last 20 years. So I'm going to give him an opportunity, maybe play devil's advocate, maybe represent the show a little bit better than I just have. Talk about Triple H because I have nothing good to say about him. So I'll give you the floor for now.
All right. Well, yeah. I think I'm not gonna say that I'm the biggest Triple H fan, but I think you can't discount the fact that in during the Attitude Era, which is obviously the era that a lot of people go back to, um, especially for people our age, and we're either watching then, or if you look back on it, and that's kind of as far back as a lot of people go as far as researching wrestling. He was in a lot of cases the main antagonist for a lot of those top guys like The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Undertaker, guys like that. He was the main bad guy. Now obviously that you can look at it as him being involved with the McMahon family. Maybe you can certainly tie in some of that to him being able to be in the top spot like he was. Um, but I think as far as wrestling goes, he's a good wrestler. He's not elite wrestler. But yeah, I don't think I'm not gonna say he's terrible. I think his promos. There are promos he does where it's just kind of bland and boring.
Mhm.
He's had some that I thought are good, and he can come up with some funny stuff. Um, especially stuff him and Sean used to do in DX. That was pretty funny. That was a pretty innovative stuff. But yeah, I think he gets a lot of flack, but I don't think he's as bad as people say he is. Now I don't think he's like you said, I don't think he's 7 on this list. but I'm
Yeah.
not surprised that he is. Um, especially because of, and it kind of goes to the whole thing with the older wrestlers anyway. A lot of recency bias. A lot of those older guys, they were great for so long ago that a lot of people don't even remember that stuff now,
Mhm.
and they focus more on the newer stuff. So um, as far as a defensive Triple H, that wasn't the greatest one, but I think you can't take away from the fact that he was, as the Sports Illustrated list says, he was the main antagonist in the Attitude Era for all the megastars that they had. So I
Yeah.
think you can't discount that,
Um,
and the fact that he was really good, throughout from the Attitude Era through the Ruthless Aggression Era, and then the PG era was whatever, but in
yeah.
that time frame, he was, you know, the main guy in certain instances.
Just don't like him. Yeah, just don't like him. And I remember, when Jordan and I started watching wrestling together, he was in the feud with Seth Rollins. And God, I just wanted Seth Rollins to just, I don't want to use the C word, but what he did to Sting.
Yeah,
Anyways,
his stuff in the later years was really bad. Like
yeah,
it was just like, dude, you've been on top for so long. You're getting, let some other guys have a
yeah,
shot. I mean,
yeah,
you don't have to go over every single person. And that is a knock against him, that there have been times in matches he's had throughout the years where his opponent should have won, needed to win, and didn't get it, probably because of backstage politics
yeah.
on his part. So yeah, that can also be a knock against him. I'm not gonna, I agree on that one.
I think of Booker T at WrestleMania. You had an opportunity to put a
That
guy
was
for to the moon. I mean, Booker T. I'm not going to say he could have been The Rock, but he could have been a bigger name exiting that 2004 2005 era, and you didn't put him over, and it stunted his ceiling. I feel like,
yeah, yeah. He was really big at that point.
yeah,
Had a lot of
and so
momentum behind
entertaining.
him.
Um,
Or like Punk at WrestleMania, what was it 26? I think, or 20. I can't remember which. It was at WrestleMania, I think.
yeah,
Or no,
probably.
maybe
Yeah,
was it WrestleMania? Or no, maybe it was like Night of Champions or something. Some pay-per-view when Punk had just, changed into the whole cult of personality thing, and he was like
yeah,
white hot. And I think he even said it in his shoot interview that he did after he left. That you had. And I think he said he told it Triple H's face. You should have put me over, and you didn't.
yeah.
And that's always kind of been that big knock against him.
Yeah, I mean, I think of the corporate stuff and how boring it got to a point. And, the argument always was, well, they don't have any stars. And it's like, well, you haven't made any in the last 10 years. So that's kind of, or last, not 10, but you know what I mean? Last like 7, 8 years, it's like, that's kind of on the WWE. But,
Yeah.
anyways, so, something I always emphasize when we have these broad discussions, a lot of people right now are talking about, are the Young Bucks one of the top five tag teams of all time? You got to think wrestling is, the world heavyweight champion has been around for 120 years now. This
Mhm.
is a very old form of entertainment or a sport or whatever you want to call it, a business. Um, and there's a lot of people who have blazed the trails, from the pioneer era to the territory days to the, early national television era, the golden age, what people call it, the attitude era onwards. A lot
Mhm.
of people have come along. So when we have these kind of discussions, a lot of people go, oh, it's crazy. 50 guys better than Triple H. A lot of wrestling history in a lot of different companies. The WWF has not always been on top. Um, at one point it was just another territory, and they were bigger fish in the ocean. So, um, we made this list. Double checked it, triple checked it, talked about it a lot. There were some names that we thought should go on here, and I guess transparency. This wasn't, let's just come up with 50 names and we're going to just flippantly say they're better than Triple H. We thought about this. We went back and forth. I'm gonna name the first 25. Jordan's gonna talk to you, name the last 25. And then we're gonna go over some of the guys that we were kind of on the fence about that we left on the list. Maybe some guys I left off the list. We'll see how that goes. But I'll start. Number one, Frank Gotch, George Hackenschmidt, Strangler Lewis, Jim Landis, Lou Fez, Vern Gagne, Gorgeous George, Buddy Rogers, Andre the Giant, Harley Race, Bruno Sammartino, Nick Bockwinkel, Dusty Rhodes, Argentino Rocca, Dory Funk Jr., Stan Hansen, Ricky Dozan, Antonio Inoki, Giant Baba, Mitsuharu Misawa, Kenta Kobashi, Jushin Thunder Liger, Hiroshi Tanahashi, Keiji Muto, and El Santo. Be it from Europe, America, Japan, Mexico. Some of these guys are more modern, like take a Tanahashi. Some of these guys are very old. Um, a lot of these guys were catch as catch can world champions prior to the NWA. Some of them were NWA champions. Some of them were pioneers in other markets. Um, some of them were in the AWA, like a Nick Bockwinkel or a Vern Gagne. Those guys, multiple world championships, reigns that lasted over 1,000 days. Um, but all of these guys, for the most part, made their bones prior to national television. Probably about the first 17 of them. So I'm gonna let you take it for the other half of the list. And this is more modern. These are more modern guys. Guys that some of these guys were on the SI list, some of them not. But
Yeah.
anyway.
And I don't know if you said this or not, but we're not like ranking them
Oh yes,
like
yes,
one.
yes.
Like
This is
we're just naming 50 guys. We're not like ranking them in
yes.
this spot. So yeah, don't nobody freak out about anybody being a certain place on this list because it was just guys we were just naming for to try to get 50 guys. But so next part of the list, starting at 26, Terry Funk and Ricky Steamboat, Roddy Piper, Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, John Cena, Ric Flair, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, Kurt Angle, Roman Reigns, Chris Jericho, Randy Savage, Brock Lesnar, Bryan Danielson, Sting, Rey Mysterio, Randy Orton, AJ Styles, Vader, CM Punk, Eddie Guerrero, and Edge.
Okay.
And so a lot more modern guys, a lot more names that people will probably recognize. Um, and I think they're, depending on how you think about it, some of these guys on here, I think you could might make a case as far as like their career wasn't as long as Triple H's was. That was kind of my thought initially when we were making it and we kind of finalized this list. And I was kind of looking at it, like some of these guys, obviously really great, but their careers were not nearly as long as Triple H's. I mean, give him credit, he's been around. He was around for a long time.
Yeah.
Kind of, in the same breath as the Undertaker, they were around, early on. They were around the Attitude Era, the Ruthless Aggression Era, the PG era. They were around for all of that. Whereas a guy like Kurt Angle, he was only around WWE for like what would we say, 5, 6 years?
Yeah.
Um,
Seven is the most, maybe seven's pushing it, but
yeah, and then I mean he was in TNA for a long, long time. And just things like that. I think you can make a case like in the case of a guy like Edge. I mean, obviously we said he was hurt for 10 years. He was retired. Um, Brian Danielson, same type of thing. Was hurt for a lot of time. A lot of time he wasn't a main guy. He was kind of in the mid card. So there's different factors you can kind of you know pick at. You can kind of debate about how important it is when you take into consideration all of the things you look for in a wrestler as far as wrestling ability, promo ability, the look, the charisma that they have. There's things you can nitpick, but I think we got a good solid list here.
there's some guys we left off who I think are better than Triple H, but we wanted to dial it into 50 on the dot. And then there's some guys that we, that are on this list that we had some conversations about. and those guys are Edge, Eddie Guerrero, CM Punk, Brian Danielson. All four of those guys are more modern guys whose careers are more easily comparable to Triple H's. We talked about having them on the list. To me, Brian Danielson's a shoe in. I mean, I think he has an argument that he's the best wrestler of the last 25 years. Um, Eddie Guerrero is tough because he died so young, but he had already been wrestling for, you know, over 15 years and prominently too, between Mexico and Japan and America, WCW, WWE, he's been a world champion. And he's was such a great worker and such a great talker and revolutionized wrestling in a multitude of ways. Um, Edge Um, Edge is interesting because he was a world champion a lot. He was a tag team champion a lot. We talked about his placement on the SI list being above Randy Orton, which seems weird, but I think Randy and Edge are both better than Triple H. Just when you look at the combined body of work and you think of that, the reaction he got when he came back speaks incredibly to how much people loved him and missed him. CM Punk, my favorite wrestler of all time. Now, maybe this seems biased, but how many guys have ever been as big as Punk was when he was on top of WWE? I mean, at one point, it's hard to seem like you're bigger than the WWE. You're bigger than the brand, right? I mean, they tried to build it into this Harlem Globetrotters esque thing where you go to see the show, not the people. And for a little while, it felt like CM Punk was bigger than the show. Am I off base saying that?
No, no, definitely not. I mean, he when they had the whole thing with him and Cena at Money in the Bank, and he came back and he was, the champion, and he was just so, white hot
Yeah.
at that point. I mean, just the biggest, most popular wrestler in the company, maybe in the world at that point.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I don't think very few guys have ever been that over and had that much momentum behind them.
Yeah. Um,
And the thing too with Triple H is the kind of the knock on him is that he was always kind of the guy who worked with that guy. Like
yeah.
he worked with the Austins, he worked with the Rock. He worked with John Cena, he worked with CM Punk. Um, he was always kind of the guy who worked with the megastar.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think that's kind of why I think he on a lot of these lists he's put so high is because he was prominently involved with some of the biggest, most popular wrestlers of our generation.
Yeah.
His time in the company. I mean, he was working with those guys. Um, so yeah, I think that's a big reason why he's seen so highly.
Yeah.
Whenever you're talking about the greatest of wrestlers of all time, he's usually involved somewhere in there as far as WWE wrestlers go.
I try to separate my objectivity or my subjectivity from this list and try to be objective. And um, you know, y- yeah, I don't like him, and yeah, he never really resonated with me. But you look at the Reign of Terror and the ratings of the shows just diminishing as his title reign went on, and the super long promos and the mediocre matches, and you know, you look at Evolution and the Sledgehammer, and it got old. It just got to the point where, and then he kind of fell out of favor and comes back, and it would after that run with the World Heavyweight Championship, it waxed and waned, but you just kept wondering why is this guy going over on people? I mean, and look, I mean, you said involved with the McMahons. Define involved. I mean, he's married to the boss's daughter, and
Mhm.
always going to be figured in, but you talk about someone like Ric Flair. Ric Flair put people over, right? Ric Flair gave people opportunities to prove themselves as champion and to beat him. And yeah, it might not have always worked, but that wasn't Ric Flair's fault. I don't feel like Triple H was as giving. And you can say, well, he didn't need to be. Well, he kind of does. I mean, he's a heel. That's sort of the point. I mean,
Yeah.
he wasn't supposed to be the final boss of the WWE. He was supposed to be, a guy that put guys over. That's
Mhm.
the point of being a transitional champion, so to speak. So I don't know. I just never been a fan, and I don't think it's just because it doesn't resonate with me. I think there's found reasons for that. Maybe if I were my age now, then maybe I would be. I don't know. It's tough to say. Unfortunately, I didn't experience Attitude Era firsthand. Right. Once you watch things after the fact, you lose the context and the day to day conversation of what's going on in the business. Right. But yeah, just when I was growing up in the PG era, so to speak, I didn't like him, and never grew to like him. He's a better booker than he is a wrestler, and that's, I guess, it's saying a lot because I'm not
Yeah,
out here saying Triple H isn't a great wrestler. He is a great wrestler, but there are a lot of other great wrestlers. Is my point.
yeah, yeah. He shouldn't be, as high as he's looked at in
No,
a lot of these instances. And I mean, obviously, we put up, name 50 guys. You could probably name more.
yeah,
Um, uh, and obviously, whenever you're ranking anything, it's always, subjective to how people think, what people think is more important. Is the wrestling ability more important? Is the promo ability more important? The charisma, the how many big matches, how many world titles. It all depends on how people view it. But if you kind of ball everything together, I think you can make a case that there are a lot more guys who should be looked at um, as being better than Triple H.
yeah. Um, and just on that SI list, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, Bruno San Martino, Edge, Randy Orton, Andre the Giant. I think all those guys are better than Triple H.
Mhm.
Guys I didn't have on this list. Um, I didn't include Bob Backlund. I didn't include Pedro Morales, who was a world champion before he went to the WWF and then afterwards, and was the first Grand Slam champion in the WWF. Bob Backlund was champion for like a combined 2,000 days. He was champion for the last half of the 70s and into the 80s. Um, I didn't put him on the list. I didn't put Jack Briscoe, who was the NWA's world champion for like something absurd, like 700 days or something like that. There are guys I didn't throw in the list who could have been. A guy we went back and forth on was Samoa Joe, who we both love and has had a tremendous career. He just never won the WWE championship. He
Yeah,
got pushed really far, and he should have beaten Brock, and he didn't. But he's been the Ring of Honor champion, the AEW champion, the TNA champion. He's had incredible matches everywhere he's gone. I would argue at one point he was the best wrestler in the world.
yeah,
I mean, I didn't put Tiger Mask 1 or, gosh, Okada I didn't put on the list. Kenny Omega. I mean, this might, really getting into some deep waters, but I would make an argument Kenny's better than him, and he's not on the list. So yeah, I don't know. I just when you're talking about great wrestlers, great tag teams, whatever it is, there's a lot of history, and you have to really, you know, uh, I think people act like this is an outrageous claim. It's not that outrageous. So, anyways,
yeah. I think also it changed people's perspective on it because a lot of the guys that you named on your list, either one, people weren't, a lot of people watching now weren't watching then because it was an older generation, or a lot of those guys never, were overseas in Japan or wherever else, or they were, in TNA, or they were wherever, they weren't in WWE. And there's a lot of people who only watch WWE. They don't know what's happening in other companies. They don't care what's happening in other companies. And I think that can kind of skew people's opinion of it because Triple H was a prominent person, prominent wrestler in the WWE for a lot of our lifetime. So then the newer generation recognizes him as, oh, this guy's one of the greatest ever because he's was world champion in WWE however many times, and he was always in the main event. He was always doing this, that, and the other. Whereas a lot of the guys that we've named have were big, long years and years and years ago. And so I think, if you look at the totality of wrestling, like you said, there's so much of it
Mhm.
that to say that Triple H is, and like you said, it's not like we're saying he's a terrible wrestler. He's a great wrestler and he
Yeah,
deserves to be recognized. But when you take in the totality of the history of wrestling, yeah, he's not up there in the top, like the top 50 here. And then you can, like we said, you could probably name more people
yeah.
um, that are over him.
It's not like wrestling's not quite like professional sports in that, I'm a big basketball fan. Jordan's a big NFL fan. Those leagues have been the pinnacle of those sports for, the NBA's case, it's going on 77 years now, I guess. In the NFL's case, over 100, right? So, the best football players, maybe barring like the Browns in the AAFL or whatever, they played in the NFL. The best teams, best players went to the NFL. So, they have the ability to celebrate their history in its totality. They have 100 years of history to celebrate, and they do a great job of it. I mean, you look at the century list they did a few years ago, where they had the Bill Belichick's on there talking about these guys, and I mean, what a beautiful way to celebrate history. But the WWE doesn't really do a good job of celebrating wrestling history. It does a good job of celebrating WWE's history and kind of how they want to portray it. And like I said, they control their narrative, So um, I think a lot of these guys just they're not talked about because, like you said, people didn't watch them, and no one's, I guess part of his history doesn't sell, right? But no one's talking about Luthez or Frank Gotch or George Gorgeous George on the WWE. It's just we don't celebrate those things. So, anyways, or even Argentina Rocca, who was in the WWF in the CWC before he was. Anyways, he was in New York. And he worked for Vince McMahon. People don't talk about Argentina Rocca.
Mhm.
It was so long ago, and Vince wasn't running the company. Vince Jr. wasn't running the company then, and there's lots of things that factor into this. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I just Triple H is in top 50. That's the story. I'm sticking to it. Any other thoughts, Jordan?
No, I think we covered everything about it. Like I said, I'm sure there's probably people who disagree with this. There's probably people who think he's over other people. And like I said, it's when you're talking about who's better than who, it always can be, it's always subjective. It's always, what people like, what they don't. Um,
This is subjective. If you think we're wrong, comment why you think we're wrong. If you think we're way off base, get bent, but still leave a comment. Be fun, and I will respond because late at night I have nothing better to do. So um, this has been a lot of fun. I can't wait for this video to come up and see the response. Um, Jordan, thank you for helping me make this list. We sat down one evening before a Dynamite episode and came up with this last week. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, thank you, SI, for giving us this idea, tying this all together because, yeah, Triple H number 7 on that list, crazy. I just think he's overrated. I guess it's my closing statement. So thank you, Jordan.
yeah, I don't think I can really add any more to that.
Say it. Say it. Fuck Triple H. Say it.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that.
Okay. All right.
I don't feel as strong as hate towards Triple H that you do. Um,
Well, anyways, thank you guys for watching again. We'll be back next Friday with another episode of Petree's Pit. Um, Top dogs out.